Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people looking to live life at their peak potential, chock full of real-world tools and knowledge that you can apply in your life today. By providing you with a lens into the lives, beliefs, practices, and actions of those who are already living extraordinary lives, the Performance Enhancing Podcast will help you shift your mindset or create that change in your daily rituals and habits so you can explode with success in the areas of life that are most important to you. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with SatoriPrime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Performance Enhancing Podcast with your host, Ilan Ferdman. And we're back here with Kim Ades. And this time, very different than the first, we're actually going to be taking you through the process that Kim takes her clients. So what we've done is we've actually taken a client's journal and we're going to dissect it together. It was really, really interesting, just to see the power of journaling, but more importantly, and we've spoken about this before, but how one instant in your life basically affects all areas of your life. And more than that, sheds light on how you think and operate in all areas of life. I also will share a very personal story with you guys about my relationship with my father. But ultimately, Kim said this one line, and I thought it was really great, which is the very thing we want is the thing that we hold farthest away. And the power of journaling actually lets you see the way you're dealing with certain things and you start seeing the patterns, and that gives you some incredible insights on where you need to be looking. So without further ado, here's part one of my interview with Kim Ades as we look at this specific journal entry. Enjoy. All right, everyone, welcome back. So I brought Kim Ades back. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. Happy to be here.
I'm great. The reason I brought Kim back is because I loved our interview. And I just feel like we were just scratching the surface. And I think we're going to probably do this kind of like a happy corner that we have. We'll keep bringing Kim on and just do different cuts of different things. But one of the suggestions that Kim made, which I really loved, was to actually use a journal entry and kind of take you guys through the process that she goes through with her clients and how she's able to work with people and really give them feedback that's impactful in their lives. So what we're going to do today is read an actual journal entry, and have Kim kind of give us some feedback, and I'll ask questions. We'll go through that process and really give you guys an understanding of how powerful journaling is, and B, this work in general. So Kim, take it away.
Okay, so here's a journal. It's written by a gentleman. He's maybe in his early 50s, and he's talking about an experience he's having while he's at his kind of summer cottage. So here's how it goes. Sunday morning, and I'm still at the cottage. Our dog Sunny is on a diet. She's a big dog and overweight. She's having trouble standing from a lying position, and the vet says it's affecting her hips. When I let Sunny out, she runs over to my in-laws' cottage. They feed her bread, which is like junk food to the dog. We buy healthy dog food because we want the dog to stay healthy and not have problems. Our bond with our dog is very strong. Yesterday, I caught my mother-in-law feeding her. I asked her, please don't feed the dog. She's on a diet. So this morning, once again, I see my mother-in-law throwing food on the ground. It just happened a few minutes ago. This is upsetting to me. And she won't even feed Sunny with her hands, which is kind of disrespectful to the dog. I know you're probably thinking it's a dog, for God's sakes, but to me, it's disrespectful. The whole act is upsetting to me. We care for Sunny deeply. She's part of our family. So later I will have to go tell her again not to feed the dog. I don't understand why she deliberately ignores my request. She's not the only one. Why do you think people disrespect me this way? So I chose this particular journal because it's a little bit humorous. You can kind of visualize the scene. You can imagine the dog running over to the mother-in-law's home, and the mother-in-law throwing the bread on the floor, and this client witnessing the whole situation and feeling a sense of betrayal, a sense of, as he says, disrespect.
Yeah.
And so this one incident, and maybe multiple incidents, with respect to the dog turns into a huge issue with respect to why do people disrespect me? Here's just another story or indicator or example of disrespect. So I'm curious, when you heard this particular journal, what was running through your mind?
I actually wrote and underlined disrespect 3 times. For me, when I hear people like that, I try to always coach people around disassociating the event from just the event. Our reactions are always based on our knee-jerk reaction, for example, is just a program. It's just something that was predetermined ages ago. And so what I would have him do is have him see that this one event is just highlighting his whole issue around feeling disrespected, and then look at others, because this probably happens to him multiple times a day. And having that emotion run would have you be a very specific type of person. Like, you would have to be a certain way in order to continuously feed that. It's almost like people get juice in certain situations. He gets juice out of being in disrespect, like being disrespected, so he can go through whatever process he goes through after that.
Okay, so that's an interesting statement. Basically, you're saying he's getting some type of benefit from thinking that he gets disrespected. Like it fuels him somehow. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, as a coach, what I want to do with this situation is actually call it funny to the client.
Okay.
And, look at it with a humorous point of view. The funny thing, actually incredibly funny thing that happened with this exact journal is maybe 2 days later, I had another client with exactly the same story, his dog and his mother-in-law, and it was like a Twilight Zone moment for me. 2 completely different clients living in opposite ends of the world who had exactly the same experience with their mother-in-laws.
Wow.
The same degree of fury related to the disrespect that they were experiencing.
Wow.
Not understanding why this kind of thing takes place in their lives. And so the first thing I want to do is highlight that it's a little bit humorous. You have a dog who runs over to the mother-in-law. The mother-in-law isn't kicking the dog. The mother-in-law is, in fact, feeding the dog. So it's a form of love. It's a form of affection. There's an issue at play here, which is related to, well, why isn't she giving the dog food by hand, and why is she just throwing it on the ground? And, what we discuss at that point is the mother-in-law's comfort with dogs, and maybe having some measure of fear around, the dog's mouth close to her hand, or whatever it is, but that in fact her act of feeding the dog was her ability to give love in the way that she could give love to the dog, right? And so already that's a reframing in terms of not seeing it as a sign of disrespecting the dog, but actually seeing it as a sign of, here's my way of loving you to the extent that I have the ability to love you, because I'm limited, I'm restrained, I have fear, I have ideas about maybe the cleanliness of dog mouths and all this other stuff that infests my system, yet I'm still feeding the dog. So maybe we can look at the mother-in-law in a slightly positive manner just for even making an effort to feed the dog. Now, the second layer was why he feels disrespected himself and how he handles that and how he comes across and how that is perhaps a common theme that shows up for him. And so here is our opportunity from a coaching standpoint to kind of give him some insights about how thought management operates, how he has the ability to master his thinking. So when I feel any feeling, in his case, he feels disrespect, that has nothing to do with what's happening out there. It has to do with the story I'm telling about what's happening out there.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have control over that story.
Yeah.
So the way I feel disrespected. The way I feel is a function of my thinking. It's not a function of what my mother-in-law is doing.
Yep.
And so what I do as a coach is I use this example to start to lay the foundation for my clients about how thought management operates, and use this example to teach the structure, the principles of thought management that can now be applied to other examples and situations. So what I do then is I say, well, if this story causes you to feel disrespected, can you create a new story that has you feeling a little bit differently?
Yeah. Very interesting. So in this particular case, is there some process that you would take someone through to kind of reframe and create a new story around this?
Well, so the first part is we're getting it out in journaling. And the second part is, let's say they journaled on Saturday and my call with them is on a Thursday. From Saturday to Thursday, I'm asking questions about this. I'm engaging in their journal to extract more information. So one question I may ask is, did she say anything specific to indicate disrespect? Or, so I would ask around the actual experience.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is that I want to get more of his interpretation of the event and the experience he's having. So what's causing you to feel exactly like you're being disrespected? And when you say, why do people disrespect me this way? I would then ask for other examples.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
What I'm trying to do is really piece together his vision of himself and how he operates in the world, who he is, how people respond to him, because that narrative is what plays out in his life. He's making that come to life.
Yeah. The other thing that I noticed in that, we put labels on stuff. So a word like disrespect to you, me, and him would mean three very, very different things. It's our interpretation, right, of disrespect. So what I heard him use disrespect as is someone not listening to his wishes. So he's making a request and they, in his world, they choose to purposely not listen and do the opposite, which would create a very certain world for someone. And that, again, if knowing that that's not a new conversation and it's not just with his mother-in-law, and this guy probably running a pretty successful business, like that would be something that would be very, very impactful in day-to-day life. And if you're someone who goes around life thinking that people do the opposite of what you ask or don't do what you ask, you're going to come up with a whole bunch of strategies because you're already coming into a conversation with someone being a no. So,
right. And you feel like a victim all day and all night, and you don't attempt things because you already imagine what the outcomes are going to be. So your ability to take risks, your willingness to take risks is going to be severely hampered because you've already played out a negative outcome in your mind.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting, and you pointed it out just now, is that like this is a story of a dog at a cottage, right? It's a personal little anecdote. But the implications of this story are very wide and broad. And so what does that mean? If we do look at how he operates in his business, we notice that this little story can be transferred into a whole bunch of other areas of his life. Yeah. How does it affect his relationship with his wife? How does it affect his relationship with his partner? How does it affect the way he deals with his clients? And so on and so forth. And so what we see is this is a current running, consistent theme that shows up that is debilitating for him, that prevents him from having deep, intimate relationships with people and has him feeling constantly on the defense. And as such, as it turned out with this particular person, he holds people at an arm's length distance, doesn't come close to them because he doesn't trust them. And so here's how he lives his life. And so people often ask me, like, what is this? Is this life coaching? Is this business coaching? Is it, executive coaching? Like, is it relationship coaching? What is it? And the answer is it's all of that. It's frame of mind coaching because we're looking at how you think and how your thinking affects all areas of your life. And so, I love this example because it's so tangible. And so people say, well, like it's too specific. Like, who cares? It is just a dog. But in the just a dog story is where you see truly how the person feels about themselves and what they mean in the world.
Yeah.
So the more stories I can capture, the more I understand how this person operates and how they're wired. And I can begin to rewire their system just by simply challenging their view of this one particular perspective and teaching them, literally, it's a teaching process, apply a new perspective to a million other situations. And applying a set of principles that say, hey, nobody out there is responsible for the way you feel. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. What matters is how you interpret what other people are doing. And it's your thinking that creates the emotion, not the experience.
Yeah. I mean, most people, and I obviously don't know this man, but most people that have these kind of conversations tend to be, like you said, they live in victim world a lot, because this is a thing. It's like a very point the finger move, which is, I'm not responsible for any of this. They are responsible for this because I've already told them. Now they're disrespecting. They're not doing what I told them. Everything is over there. And because of that, those people tend to enjoy this. What I said, like, they get some sort of juice out of it, right? So when other people disrespect, he no longer has to be responsible for X, whatever X might be. It could be in the partnership, it could be with his wife, it could be with his in-laws, whatever. And I think for a lot of people, holding themselves responsible for everything, for their reactions, for how they paint the story, which then has them be a certain way with other people around them. I would also, like, when I coach people, I like to have them see the benefit, like the payoff for them, and also the impact that it has. So, like, really powerful if someone can get in the impact of what that way of viewing the world has robbed them, whether it's relationships, opportunities, people like I don't know if he's got kids, but I'd imagine that this runs the show with his kids also. So that would be a really great place to look, because most likely his relationship with his kids is not at a 10, let's say, because he's probably doing the same thing.
It's not at a 10. You're 100% right. And what's interesting is when you say, like, what's the payoff? The payoff is being right, being righteous.
Yeah.
Viewing oneself as being more ethical, more respectful, more, holding yourself up to a higher standard when the rest of the world around you isn't quite at your level.
Yeah.
And so even in that viewpoint, you're creating a disparity and a distance between yourself and everybody else. And there's some kind of pleasure in looking at yourself at a higher level.
Yeah.
But what ends up happening, and the cost is very high, very, very high, because and here's what's fascinating. When you ask this particular client, what's the single most important thing in your world, he will answer you, over and above everything else, the most important thing is that I'm intimate and close and on the same page with my wife.
Huh.
Right? And so his demeanor, his manner of looking at himself in the world doesn't necessarily breed that. Right? And so my job is to keep reminding him, what's the single most important thing to you? It's really relationships. And it might be with his wife, but certainly the other close people in his world are just, maybe not as important, but a close second. And what he's doing is not building the foundation of close relationship. And so when we talk about this, it's a bit theoretical. Like, here are the principles, here's how you operate. But now we have to go back and say, okay, so if it's true that the way you feel is a function of your thinking, and the way you're thinking about the dog and your mother-in-law is causing you to feel disrespectful, what can you do to feel differently? So now we have to kind of circle back and say, what action can you take from here on in that will change the game, rather than you feeling bad about what's going on?
Yeah.
And so the answer might be, hey, there are some healthy snacks to give the dog. let me set you up with a bag of healthy snacks because you love to feed the dog. Give them this instead of that.
Yep.
Right. And like for him, that was a revolutionary idea.
Ha!
Right.
So funny.
Right. Because what you're doing there is you're saying, I love the fact that you're feeding the dog. Let me help you do this more effectively.
Yeah.
Let me be on your side. Let me be on your team. Let me appreciate your affection toward the dog. And let me help you get close to the dog so that maybe feeding him by hand becomes easier for you to do.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's a whole different way of looking at things. But, here, let me add an extra layer. The way he views his mother-in-law is she's being disrespectful. What I've done is I've helped him look at his mother-in-law with a completely different lens.
Yeah.
And it's assume positive intent. Her intent is positive. She wants to feed the dog. She wants to give the dog a treat, a snack. It's her way of bonding.
Yeah.
That's very positive. The other viewpoint is rather negative. So if we can assign positive intent to people, our interactions completely change.
Yeah. Absolutely. It just reminds me, I don't know why it reminded me of this story, but it reminded me of this story. I had always thought that my relationship with my parents was good. When I did my first, personal development course, you obviously look at your parents a lot because that's just what people do. Half your life is structured there. I realized that at around the age, like when I was in middle school, going into high school, I don't remember the exact age, I had somehow had it that my dad was constantly trying to tell me what to do, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. And so everything he shared with me, insights, anything, just started sounding like he's trying to tell me what to do, which then spun into he's trying to control my life. And it got so bad that my dad could literally tell me, I love you. And all I would hear is, you're trying to control me. Like, that's it, So when something like that happens, and you were sharing, I think it popped in my head because he just has such a skewed vision of his mother-in-law that it almost doesn't matter what she's going to do. He's going to find disrespect.
That's right.
In that scenario. Just like, my dad could literally say, I love you. And all I would hear is, stop.
Manipulation. Yeah, manipulation.
Yeah. And once I realized that, and I took that filter off and then could actually interact with my father, it's the same thing. The intent, and now being a father, it's much easier, obviously, for me to understand this, but the intent is always of what is best for you. The thing where it kind of gets messy is in the fact that we don't see how people are, we see how we are in other people. And so when this guy's looking at his mother-in-law, he looks at how he would respond in that situation. And if he were to not feed the dog in the mouth and just put bread on the floor to someone else's dog, that in his world would be a complete sign of a big FU.
Right.
So he can only see that in the mother-in-law, even though in her world, it's completely different. It's probably exactly like you said. She's probably trying to connect with her son-in-law and be like, oh my God, I'm terrified of dogs, but yet I'm going to do this thing because I know that, John's really going to like it.
Exactly.
And it's just crazy that that's how we live our lives.
It's crazy that that's how we live our lives and that we spend so much time deeply, deeply wanting connection and experiencing everything with disconnection.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything, but a lot.
Yes, a lot.
Right? And so the very thing that we want most is the thing that we hold the furthest away from ourselves.
Yeah.
On a constant basis by the narrative and story we tell in our heads about what's going on in front of us.
Yeah. I mean, I hear connection, and I know people use that word a lot. But for me, true connection means vulnerable, right? The more vulnerable you are, the more you put yourself out there, scars out in that person's arms, hands, whatever. That's connection. That's true connection, where you could be hurt like really bad. And that's the only way. And so, with someone like this, he would keep everyone at an arm's length. He's not going to let anyone in because this conversation is going to constantly run that. And yeah, he can tell you he wants connection and he wants this and all that stuff. But in his world, connection is not safe. And
That's right.
You have to build walls.
And the reason why connection is not safe is because what if someone sees my flaws? What if someone sees me the way I really am? What if someone sees and hears about any past failures? Then I'm really screwed.
Yep.
Then I can't hold myself up to that high pedestal, up to that high level. Then I'm just like everybody else.
Yeah. I'm not worthy of respect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, wow. Great conversation.
Yeah. Amazing. From a little story about a dog.
Exactly.
Isn't it just amazing how things always come back to this concept of being you? And by being you, I mean being the real you, being the vulnerable you. I just love how Kim was able to walk us through the process in the journal, and it just comes back to that, right? All we're trying to do is, I don't know if remember is the right word or rediscover is the right word, but ultimately come back to who we truly are. So hopefully you've enjoyed this part one. And part two, we're actually going to take the same exact instant and look at it from a parenting eye set. So it's really interesting. We somehow switched the conversation and pivoted it into more parenting. And I personally got a ton of value from it. And I'm sure you guys will too. And lastly, I want to just ask you guys for a favor here. If you wouldn't mind, write this email address down. It's just Ilan, ILAN, @SatoriPrime.com. And here's what I want you to email me. Guy and I are throwing around an idea to start a mastermind for mindset. So very similar to the concept that Kim does. We'll do it in a smallish type of group setting. You guys will have things that you're going to be working on, and we're going to look every other week at a concept and then actually coach you guys one-on-one in areas of life that are really important to you guys. So 2 things I want you to write me. A, is this something that you'd be interested in? And B, what would something like that be worth to you? So if there was a monthly fee associated with it, what would something like that be worth to you? We're really highly considering putting something like this together. But being that you guys know us really well, and I think if you guys have gotten anything as far as mindset from this, then you probably understand how we coach and what we're passionate about. So I'd love to hear from you guys. So again, Ilan, ILAN, @SatoriPrime.com. And just let me know if A, that's something you'd be interested in, and B, what would that be worth to you? All right. Thanks so much, guys. And we'll see you on the next Performance Enhancing Podcast.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Performance Enhancing Podcast. We've taken this pep talk and created a custom action guide so you know exactly what action steps to take now to grow your business. Just head over to SatoriPrime.com/podcast and download it for free. Also, please leave a comment and rate this podcast on iTunes. It'll help us get the word out. Thanks for listening. Now, go and implement. We'll see you next time.
Did you run through doors till you